Welcome. Thank you for attending today's webinar hosted by the Organization Development and Change and Workforce Education and Development program at Penn State. Today, we have the great pleasure of welcoming our presenter, Dr. Hyung Joon Yoon. My name is Jenny Lee, and I'm a Ph.D. candidate in Workforce Education and Development program. We also have Sagun Giri with us today, who will be managing chat feature and Q&A session. In terms of the interactive format for this webinar, please open the chat feature in the Zoom platform to interact. If you have any questions about the presentation, please use Q&A feature on Zoom. You can see the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Click the Q&A button and write your questions. The Q&A session will be at the end of the presentation. We are also live streaming this webinar on Facebook, so you can watch this on Facebook too. Our online Master of Professional Studies in Organization Development and Change can help you prepare to implement quality and continuous improvement initiatives in an organization. Furthermore, there is a Ph.D. program in Workforce Education and Development with a concentration in Human Resource Development and Organization Development. Our program has created a continuous monthly webinar series with experts around the world. Today, we welcome Dr. Hyung Joon Yoon. Dr. Yoon is an associate professor of Workforce Education and Development and Organization Development and Change at Penn State. He is currently serving as professor in charge in the same program. Also, he's a recipient of Franklin Covey's Individual Greatness Award, and he's an associate editor of Human Resource Development Review, a premier theory-building journal in the field of HRD. His research and practice focus on empowering individuals and organizations with human agency and hope. He developed the Human Agency-Based Individual Transformation model. He and his colleagues developed the Hope Action Theory and Hope Action Inventory, which are being used in different countries as a framework and a tool to help individuals live fulfilling lives. Here's Dr. Yoon.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar, and thank you, Jenny, for introducing me. Yeah, today we will I will talk about the Hope Action Theory within the organizational context. So here are some of the objectives that we will be achieving. So first one is to understand Hope Action Theory and its core properties. Second, I would like you to distinguish three different types of hope. So I will introduce those to you in a moment. And I would like also you to describe guiding principles of applying Hope Action Theory to organizations. And finally, by providing some examples of how Hope Action Theory could be applied for organizations, I'd like you to brainstorm some ways to apply Hope Action Theory, especially for organizations. Here is a Hope Action Theory. Hope Action Theory was developed in 2009 by Dr. Spencer Niles, myself, and Dr. Norm Amundsen. And it has been used by career development practitioners across the world. But today's webinar is about applying Hope Action Theory for organizations. So now we are expanding the application of Hope Action Theory for organizations beyond individuals. So to give you some background information regarding this Hope Action Theory, we integrated those three developers, integrated three theories into this model. So first one is Snyder's Hope Theory. So according to Snyder, hope has three components. One is goals. So let's suppose that you are a hopeful person, highly hopeful. Then probably you have certain goals to achieve. Okay, so goal is one component, a critical component for one to be hopeful. The second one is pathways thinking. Pathways thinking is about your ability to brainstorm different ways to achieve those goals. And third component is agency thinking. That is can do and having can do or will do attitude and your ability to take an action. So those are three components that Snyder identified in his hope theory. The second theory that we integrated is Herbert Benjura's human agency theory. There are 4 different components. One is self-reflectiveness, which is to think about your life pursuits, your interests, values, and so on. And also the actions that you've taken before. The second component is forethought. It is the ability for you to think about future possibilities and also the consequences, positive or negative consequences of your desired action. That's forethought. And third component is intentionality. So that is to have a clear intention before and while taking action. Last component is self-reactiveness. Reacting, it is reacting to your goals, which is translating your goals into action and making sure that the goals and plans are implemented and met. Okay, so that's self-reactiveness. There are, so we integrated human agency theory because it is key to make certain things to happen, a key concept. And by definition, human agency is the capacity to exercise control over the quality of one's nature, quality or nature of one's life, right? So the capacity to exercise control over the quality and nature of your life. So in plain English, that's your ability to make things happen. So that's the second theory that we integrated. The last theory is Douglas Hall's career meta competencies. That has 2 different components. One is identity, self-identity, and the other one is adaptability. So yeah, you see those components being integrated into this model. And in hope action theory, we put hope at the center with the belief that in order for you to take a step forward, you have to have a hope. And hope is the linchpin that hold other components together. So if you take a look at this pinwheel model, we call it as pinwheel model. Maybe you can understand that it may start with self-reflection. So if you are in a career planning process, it typically starts with self-reflection, understanding your uniqueness, your values or interests, and so on. And as a result of self-reflection, you reach a self-clarity state. And based on self-clarity, you envision your future possibilities. That's a visioning. And if you have a clear vision, then you translate those into goals and plans. Then the next step is implementing, and things do not go as planned. So that's where adapting comes in. And once you go through a cycle, you go back to self-reflection and think about yourself. So you can reach a higher level of self-understanding as a result of that. And also, you can understand your circumstances better. And in practice, the steps that I described could work in a career planning process, or if you apply this into the organizational setting, it can be a strategic planning process. But in practice, you can jump around. So this is pinwheel, and if you take a look at the model carefully, there's an environment. So we took environmental factors into consideration, and you can consider this pinwheel graphic as you, as an agent. There is a constant interaction between the agent and the environment. So imagine that there is a wind, there's wind blowing from the front side. Then if wind blows, this pinwheel will turn clockwise like this. And you wouldn't identify a specific color because this is all mingled together, right? So when you practice hope action theory and those components, it can jump around. So at one point in time, like within seconds, you can think about your own uniqueness, and you can think about what your future might be, things like that. So we describe the dynamic nature of those elements and in the pinwheel model. So how we can, the question is how we can apply this to organizations. So that's the main question for today's webinar. Here, these are three different types of hope. These are not developed by the hope action theory developers. These are identified by a person named Dreyhus, Peter Dreyhus. He's a researcher specializing in intellectual property and international government functioning. And he conceptualized these three different types of hope. So I got clue regarding how hope action theory could be better conceptualized within the organizational setting through his publication. So if you are wondering about these three different types of hope, how he wrote about it, just type Dreyhus and hope, and you will be able to review that article. But let me walk you through. So the first type is private hope. Private hope is something that you hold. Probably everyone who joined this webinar has hope, right? And if you belong to a certain organization or a group, or even you certainly belong to a nation, right? So there is common hope that individuals, it can be within a group, an organization, and a nation, collectively share. So that's a collective hope. For example, I'm currently professor in charge of workforce education and development. One of collective hopes that we hold at this point is to get another degree started. So that degree program is another online degree program in talent development. So our faculty members are highly supportive of that. So that's a collective hope. I will continue with that story when I talk about public hope. Public hope, interestingly, is a hope that political actors promote or they hold. It can be a secret hope. So it can be political agenda, overt political agenda, or it can be hidden agenda. That's a public hope. And here, I'm professor in charge, right? So probably in a way, I'm a political actor as a leader in the program. There would be a certain hope that I promote. So that would be public hope. So something that you want to think about is whether the public hope is aligned with collective hope. At times, they are disaligned. For example, I'm continuing with the example. So the Penn State is, other than World Campus, our online campus, Penn State promotes residential instruction. And our dean promotes residential instruction, and she wants us to develop residential programs compared to online programs. So that's public hope. So we are in a situation where there is a kind of a disconnect or disagreement between collective hope, public hope. So can you type a situation that you are in, if you can give us examples in the chat where collective hope and public hope are misaligned. If you can put some examples in, that will be very, very helpful to others as well. So for example, another example, these days, one of the hot topics throughout the world is vaccine pass. So there is one group, large group, that support a vaccine pass that also doesn't support the vaccine pass. So yeah, there is also disconnect, but within that group, they have that collective hope. Within another group, they have that type of collective hope. But let's say South Korean government these days, they are mandating vaccine pass in restaurants and private academies and so on. So if you are in the group who doesn't want to support vaccine pass, there is a disconnect between the collective hope and public hope, right? So, all right, cool. All right, so that's kind of a challenge that you will face as a leader. If you're a political actor and if you're a leader, you have to make sure if you respect and support democracy, it is very important for you to make an effort to align collective hope and public hope. Okay, so let's move on. And the hope action theory that I'm promoting in this webinar and also in my research and practice is based on OD values, and it is aligned with organization development. So I'm not sure how many of you are in the OD field, but before I make any progress, I will give you just brief overview of organization development. So organization development is a field that's highly values driven. So if you are interested in knowing about the OD or organization development values, take a look at my article. There are two articles co-authored with Sasha Farley and Cesar Padilla. Yeah, please take a look at those articles, and there's a webinar recorded. So in essence, OD takes a bottom-up approach, valuing democracy and engagement of people. Also, OD supports individuals' growth and also organizational growth. So it's quite different from a top-down authoritative approach. So hope action theory takes the OD values perspective. So that will be very helpful when I go over guiding principles. All right, so let's move on to guiding principles. So this is very important because, as I mentioned, hope action theory is based on hope theory, and in hope theory and in hope, understanding or generating many different options, many different ways to achieve an objective or a goal is very important. That's how you can make people or make you hopeful. So if you feel that you are stuck, generating ways to get over your issue will help you to be hopeful. So probably that's why people use coaches or mentors, things like that, in order to get ideas. Those ideas make people hopeful. The reason that I say this is that because there can be many different ways to achieve the same thing. And the reason that guiding principles are important is because there can be many different ways, but guiding principles won't change no matter what you practice. If you want to follow hope action theory for organizations, that's based on OD philosophies and values, right? So, okay, so here, the first principle is to ensure collective hope is represented by public hope. I talked about some disconnect between collective hope and public hope, but so this is, so I'm taking the perspective of OD practitioner who facilitate organization change, right? So this is the principles for OD practitioners. So yeah, your role that I assume is OD practitioner, okay? So in order for you to initiate organizational change aligned with OD organizational development values, then yeah, it is important for you to align collective hope with public hope. How you do it can be, first, there are some instances where there's not much public hope that is articulated. But there are certain instances, just like I gave regarding our program situation, there can be a situation where there's strong collective hope, but that's not highly represented by public hope. Then probably you will need to talk to the political actors to help them to understand where we are, what we hope, and yeah, facilitate the change. So here in hope action theory, you saw the bi-directional arrow, right? So assume that the internal component like pinwheel is you, and there's environment. Those political actors could be or are in the environment. So there's a bi-directional arrow. That means that you have a certain role that you can influence the political actors or environment. So the principle one is very important in that regard. Second one is to leverage career development to generate collective hope. So yeah, when I talked about guiding principle one, I said there are instances there are not much articulated collective hope. In that case, it is important for you to leverage career development, meaning private hope. Career development is a field that has a deep expertise in understanding private hope. So probably some of you are career development practitioners. You are experts in helping them to understand their desires, their meaning students or your clients, their desires, values, or personality, skills, and so on. So yeah, it is important for you to leverage private hope / career development to generate collective hope. Collective hope can be generated through or by understanding private hope. If there's a pyramid, probably private hope will be at the bottom, and based on the basis of that, there you can generate collective hope and then public hope. So that's a top-down, bottom-up approach. And third principle is creating and sustaining hope does not mean always being positive. So yeah, hope action theory is within the domain of positive psychology. And in the article that I wrote, here, I think our moderators shared the article citation. So I lost my train of thought. Yes, here in the OD field, people often say that there are two camps. One is a problem-based approach, organizational development that takes a problem-based approach. Another camp that takes strength-based approach or positive approach. Here, the stance that we are taking is that you don't have to be always positive. In general, we promote hopefulness. But for example, I noticed that appreciative inquiry people, so appreciative inquiry, in short, AI. So AI practitioners do not use SWOT analysis. That's strength, opportunities, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So that's in short SWOT. So because SWOT gets into some negativities, those AI people do not use SWOT. But there's a merit of understanding weaknesses that you have and also threats that your organization face. Because the whole purpose of hope action theory is to make you more hopeful, or also to help you achieve what you desire. So if understanding your weaknesses and also understanding threats is helpful in achieving what you desire, you could get into those as long as you do not take those to discourage yourself, right? So if you have the attitude to receive constructive feedback, it can be from others and it could be from within. Understanding those weaknesses or threats can be very helpful, even criticisms. The fourth one is to take an open systems approach. In the OD field, one of emerging approaches is called dialogic OD. Dialogic OD often compares it with diagnostic OD, framing it as diagnostic OD is a traditional approach in organization development. So the traditional approach takes an open systems approach, meaning it is to consider human system that can be individual, that can be a group, or that can be an organization as an entity that constantly interacts with the environment. And also there are internal components within the system that constantly interact with each other or one another. Okay, so it is crucial for you to understand you and the group and organization as an open system. That way you can understand the influence of the environment to you and what influence you can also make to the environment and internal components. Like internal components can be, if you are in the organization, there can be the rules and regulations within the organization and the system that the organization uses. And it's culture and it's leadership. It can be your tasks, things like that. So it is to understand how one component's influence another. So if you are curious about open systems approach, you can type open systems approach. And also I wrote a book chapter about it. So later, probably I can share the reference regarding open systems approach. But if you take a look at this article, you should be able to find the reference regarding open systems approach. The fifth component, I think this is very important, and this gets into the core of hope action theory. So what I mean by hope action mechanism is the components we call hope action competencies. So at the center, there is hope. And I talked about self-reflection, self-clarity, visioning, goal setting, planning, implementing, adapting. Those. So I call it as a hope action mechanism. So if you take a look, if you examine your organization or group carefully, you will notice that many organizations already adopted those practices. So for example, there's performance management, right? So if you work for an organization, probably you will be engaged in periodic goal setting process, right? So you set goals. So that's aligned with goal setting and planning, and you implement those, and you get evaluated. You can self-evaluate yourself, and also you get evaluated. So that's a self-reflection component. And there are, so probably you have a goal setting and also performance management system built in within your organization. So it is critical for you to identify some of the mechanisms that already exist within your organization. So that's a fifth guiding principle. So here, from now on, I'll be talking a little bit about how you can actually apply Hope Action Theory for organizations. This is following Hope Action Theory components. So I will be giving you information regarding the 6 steps of applying Hope Action Theory for organizations. And I have some examples of applying Hope Action Theory for organizations. But that's just one of maybe thousands of different ideas. So it is just to give you an idea for further brainstorming. So let's see. Okay, so step 1 is to engage organization members in self-reflection. So I said in career planning process, probably individuals will engage in self-reflection first, right? So when you work with organization, this is the same thing. But let's say, if you're a career development client, still my suggestion is for you to go through maybe career development or career planning process at least once in depth. So to understand yourself deeply and to crystallize who you are and to envision your future possibility and so on. But after the process, it can jump around. Even before the process, those components can jump around. But if you go through these steps carefully, it can be highly beneficial. And your psychological state will be at another level. So I have those evidence. Here, so first step is to engage organization members in self-reflection, just using the Hope Action Theory. Second step, the second component is self-clarity. So this is matching step with self-clarity. So facilitate clarification of core properties by members for themselves and the organization. So here, core properties in terms from the perspective of organization or of each organization can mean different things, right? So it can be the organizational mission or vision or values. It can be internal components, their customers, things like that. So it is important for you to even in step 1, for you to help them to understand themselves through different core properties, the lens of core properties. So step 3, once you clarified about your organization, by the way, it can take a very long time, even just to identify core values of the organization. So just like other organization development practices, OD takes a long-term approach. It's not a quick fix. It takes time because you engage the members into the process and make sure also the results are reflected in to the organizational policy and directions and so on. So it takes time. Step 3 is to help or facilitate the process of envisioning the ideal future state based on self-clarity. So the next step after self-clarity is visioning. So that's a matching step. Step 4 is to enable organizations to develop goals and plans to help achieve the desired future. So immediate step after the visioning is goal setting planning. So this is a matching step. Step 5 is monitor implementation and promote adaptability. So those components or competencies after goal setting planning are implementing and adapting. And once you're done, it's not the end, it's a cyclical model. So you go back to the self-reflection and reassess the level of hope of you or the individuals and the collective. It can be a group, organization, depending on who your client is. All right, so yeah, that's the step, probably straightforward. So you don't really need to write this down. If you have a hope action theory graphic, the pinwheel model, yeah, you can easily understand those steps. Here, I will be giving you maybe 2 brief examples. Here, this is an example regarding identifying organizational self-clarity. So the example that I will be giving you is to understand collective values, the values of an organization. Before that, I'm giving you an overview regarding some key dimensions. I mentioned about core properties of an organization. You can consider this slide as one example. It may not be a comprehensive list of those core properties, but this is a good list. So yeah, internal properties or dimensions of an organization, the core properties could be mission, core values, its history and goals. And external ones can be customers, competitors, and other environmental factors. So external would be the environment. So it's still also aligned with the hope action theory. So hope action theory takes the internal components as well as external environments into consideration. And again, there is a high emphasis on the interaction between those and high emphasis on your agency, the power of you influencing the environment and also taking the environmental effects into consideration. So yeah, here is a real example. So steps for collective values identification. So yeah, I've done some work, taking a scientific process in identifying organizational values. And you can have more steps and less steps, but this is to give you a brief idea regarding how you can help organizations and organization members understand their collective values. So first step is to identify key stakeholders. As usual, in any OD practice, it is a very important step, and get stakeholder buy-in and determine data collection methods. So yeah, you cannot just collect values, terms, and collect stories. It has to be an organized manner, and you will need to determine their collection methods, meaning it is to think about whether you will rely on survey or interviews or focus group interviews or documents or artifacts, things like that. And the third step should have the fourth step in mind, because it is critical for you to collect stories associated with the organization and the members' wishes. So yeah, you can. So there are different ways of identifying organization values, but the approach that I took, or also I take, is to identify attributed values as well as aspirational values. So attributed values is something that the organization members or customers already have experienced. So, if you think of organization A, you can describe, this organization values such and such. But strategically speaking, if you want to transform a certain organization, probably if you and the members want to transform their organization, you don't want to just stay with the existing values. You can take your wishes into consideration, strategically speaking. So that's why we consider wishes as well. So yeah, these are general steps to follow. And if you get into details, I talked about the importance of identifying data collection methods. The example that I'm giving you is the case of interviewing. So identifying values through interviews. Here, yeah, sample questions regarding identifying positive attributes in terms of values is to ask something like, recall a moment when you felt extremely positive about how your team or unit or organization functioned. So this is in the case of identifying values of the team. Okay, so if your client is an organization, then the question will be how your organization functioned, right? And then also you can get specific about the specific event that happened to them. So this is taking the perspective of a method called Enhanced Critical Incident Technique. Enhanced Critical Incident Technique. And they can describe the situation step by step from the beginning till the end. So the Enhanced Critical Incident Technique takes wishes into consideration. So here, that's why we have also a question regarding wish list component. So what value would give life to your team, unit, or organization in the future in its functioning? So, and you can ask them to provide a hypothetical situation where such a value is evident. So these are those questions that I developed are highly story-based. But you can take a different approach. Because I have some time, I will give you another example. So this was about self-clarity specific to values identification. Let's suppose that your organization or your client organization is clear about their values, mission, and so on, and you feel that you can move on to the visioning stage. In Appreciative Inquiry AI, they call it as dream phase, but we call it visioning. Here, yeah, there are differences between vision and vision statement. So this is very important. So vision can be at any time point. And vision can be images or stories for future moments. So vision is infinite, just like your imagination is infinite, right? And your role as an OD consultant, if you follow this approach, is to help them to envision different future possibilities. And you can start with a specific time point. It can be vision 2030, and that will be then vision for 2030. And vision statement is the succinct summary of the vision that the members collectively envisioned. So typically it involves short phrases like these. And then the question is how you can help the organization to engage in collective visioning process. So one of the steps that I mentioned, the first step is to engage key stakeholders. So I described those key stakeholders into 3 different groups: top management, managers, supervisors, and employees. So maybe you can start with employees. And these are something that they can do, or they probably should do. So yeah, employees will be prompted to dream about the organization regarding what their organization could be like. And express, it can be in the form of the vision, can be in the form of drawing, or it can be writing stories, things like that. And yeah, managers facilitate the process, and top management, they engage leaders and provide some guidelines and so on. And eventually, yeah, top management will collect all those stories. It can be through a team of employees by engaging all stakeholders described here. And here are some directions for employees, because it could be overwhelming for me to give you specific directions for supervisors, managers, as well as organizations. I'm just giving you kind of a teaser, with directions for employees only. So yeah, here are some organizational properties, and yeah, they can review the core properties of the organization, assuming that they reached a certain level, self-clarity level, and they can imagine what the accomplishment of each of the properties would look like. And then they can also think from the perspective of these key stakeholders, customers, employees, shareholders, and overall organizational health. And they can write stories or draw pictures for each of the domains. So yeah, that's it regarding some of the examples. So the purpose of giving you these examples was to help you brainstorm what you could offer in terms of applying hope action theory. And yeah, you will say, oh yeah, some of those things are something that I have done, and your organization also do. And yeah, that could be true. And so the hope action theory may not be unique in that sense, but the power of having hope action theory can be that it has a framework, it has critical components that you can make sure you have. And also in this presentation, I shared some guiding principles that can be helpful for you to when you implement hope action theory for organizations. So now let's get into Q&A. So yeah, if Jenny or Sagun can speak, that will be helpful on behalf of those participants.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yoon. So we have a couple of questions here. I will begin with the first one. Shmuel asks, how, according to you, a hope action theory can be implemented in extremal situations similar to COVID-19 pandemic and other global disasters? Thank you.
Okay, so one of our recent studies is to understand mechanisms for creating hopeful or support employees for their hopeful career development. So in that research, we identified key stakeholders, organizations, leaders, and employees. And we gathered data, input from HR people. And yeah, we generated some ways to help employees hopeful during COVID-19. And after the analysis, we analyzed the analysis again through the lens of hope action theory, and we generated some recommendations regarding what organizations and managers can do. So if you're interested in knowing further about the study, maybe you can take a look at the article that I will be sharing. But without referring to the article, maybe in kind of disaster type situations, yeah, maybe you can examine the level of hope maybe to begin with that the people have, and the first step I would say to get into self-reflection. So it is to understand the situation and also to come up with So the critical component regarding hope action theory and also hope theory is to understand what could be done, is to come up with ways to solve certain problems. So it will be helpful for you to take a look at each of the components of hope action theory and what could be applied in certain situation. But regardless, I would start with self-reflection component. Self-reflection doesn't mean that individuals getting into self-reflection stage or practice. It can be a collective self-reflection practice as an organization or nation and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so Aura asks, can HAT be initiated by middle management, or does upper management have more agency to initiate it?
Here, anyone can initiate hope action theory practice. So there are certain roles that you can play as an individual, as middle management, as or top management. So if you take a look at the article that I shared, you will get the idea, because we laid out concrete ideas. It was more than, I think, 200 different ideas, and we aggregated those into maybe 6 to 7 themes. So every agent within the organization or in society has their agency, has their roles that they can play.
Thank you. She also asks, what are some examples of measurement of improvement? For me, it is hard to find indicators that can measure abstract aspects of changes in company culture.
Yeah, so yeah, I've done those measures. So my expertise is to create measurable change. So I've done this before multiple times, but here it depends on what you want to measure, right? So if you want to measure the cultural change, then you need to know what the target culture would be. It can be, the cultures can be described in the form of values, or it can be something else. So what I do to help organizations is to help them to identify values, for example. So let's say we identified 8 different values. What I do is to come up with behavioral indicators, or specific indicators that can represent the value or culture that the organization wants to achieve. All right, so we gather stories and also wishes and turn them into a tool or survey that can measure the progress. So if you put together a survey, that becomes kind of diagnostic tool, and yeah, you administer it before you initiate change, and after completing the change initiative, or it can be in the middle to check to sense what's going on, and yeah, you can send out a survey. So that's just to rely on survey. You can also rely on interviews and so on. So yeah, it can be done that way. Another project that I'm working on right now is to help an organization to assess the impact of their developmental initiative to help their employees to be engaged and retained. So I use measures like work engagement and hope action inventory. I measure task performance. I measure perceived supervisor support, and so on. So I administer it before the program, during the program, after the program. And sometimes I administer it even like 3 months after or 6 months after the program. So yeah, it depends on what you wanna measure.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon. Back to you, Jenny.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dr. Yoon for sharing knowledge and expertise with us today. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to send us an email, or you can reach out to the presenter directly via email. On behalf of our OD&C program, we hope you found this webinar helpful. We would like to hear your feedback on our webinar series. Please take the survey using the link in the chat box. If you can't get the link, we will send it to you via email. Our next webinar is about a leadership model on volunteerism for work engagement and organizational commitment by Giselle L. Barrion on January 28th, Friday from the same time. We have good news that we will continue this webinar series next year. The webinar team is arranging upcoming webinars. Like previous years, we will have many scholars and practitioners as webinar presenters so that anyone who is interested in HRD-OD could join this webinar to update their knowledge and also get insight. The amazing lineup and the registration page will be open soon to the public. Registrations for all events can be found on all of our social media platforms later. So thank you all for attending today and see you in the next webinar. Thank you, Dr. Yoon.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Jenny, Segun, Farhan.